They came from the north like thunder across the sea. Warriors who feared neither storm nor steel, who carved their names into the bones of history with fire and fury. The Vikings. For centuries, they were the shadow that haunted Europe's nightmares. Raiders who took what they wanted and answered to no god but their own. But then something changed. Something that would either forge them into an empire or destroy everything they were. Christianity arrived. And the question that echoes through the halls of time is this: did it weaken the wolves of the north? Or did it sharpen their teeth? Imagine standing on a windswept cliff in 9th century Scandinavia, watching longships slice through dark waters. These weren't just boats, they were extensions of the Viking soul, vessels of ambition and conquest. The men who sailed them believed in Odin and Thor, gods who demanded courage and rewarded violence. Death in battle wasn't something to fear. It was a ticket to Valhalla, an eternal feast where warriors drank and fought forever. This belief made them nearly unstoppable. They didn't just raid, they terrorized. From the monasteries of Lindisfarne to the gates of Paris, the Vikings were a force that seemed beyond the reach of civilization itself. But power attracts transformation. As Viking raiders settled in places like England, Ireland, and Normandy, they didn't just take land. They absorbed culture. They married local women. They traded with Christian kingdoms. And slowly, inevitably, the new faith began to seep into their world. Some Viking leaders saw Christianity not as a weakness but as a tool, a key that could unlock doors their axes never could. When a Viking jarl converted, it wasn't always about divine revelation. It was strategy. Christianity brought legitimacy. It turned pirates into princes, warlords into kings recognized by the rest of Europe. It transformed outlaws into rulers who could sign treaties, arrange marriages, and build dynasties. Take Rollo, the Viking chieftain who terrorized France so thoroughly that the French king offered him land just to make him stop. Rollo converted to Christianity, became the Duke of Normandy, and his descendants would go on to conquer England in 1066. That's not weakness, that's evolution. Christianity didn't make Rollo less dangerous. It made him legitimate. It gave his violence a framework, his ambition a future. His grandson's grandson would sit on the English throne. From raider to royalty in 3 generations, Christianity was the bridge that made it possible. But there's another side to this story, darker and more troubling. When a culture abandons its old gods, something dies. The Viking world was built on a certain kind of freedom, a wildness that didn't bow to kings or priests. Christianity brought hierarchy, obedience, sin, and salvation. It brought the idea that some authority, somewhere beyond the sea, could tell a man how to live and die. For some Vikings, this felt like chains. The old ways celebrated individual glory, the deed that would live in saga and song. Christianity preached humility, turning the other cheek, loving your enemy. These weren't just different ideas. They were opposite ways of seeing the world. There's a famous moment in Viking history when King Olaf of Norway forced Christianity on his people at sword point. He destroyed pagan temples, killed those who resisted, and declared that Norway would be Christian whether it wanted to be or not. This was Christianity as conquest, not conversion. And it worked. In a sense, Norway became Christian. But something was lost in the violence of that transformation. The fierce independence, the defiant spirit that made the Vikings who they were. It didn't disappear overnight, but it began to fade. The warriors who once answered only to their own courage now answered to bishops and popes, to a God who judged them not for their strength, but for their obedience. Yet here's where the story gets complicated, where simple answers fail. Because Christianity didn't just weaken the Vikings, it also unified them. Before Christianity, Scandinavia was a patchwork of tribes and territories, constantly fighting each other. Christian kings like Harald Bluetooth used the new faith to consolidate power, to turn scattered clans into something resembling nations. Christianity provided a common language, a shared framework that connected Viking rulers to the rest of medieval Europe. It turned raiders into traders, warriors into diplomats. It opened markets and alliances that had been closed to pagans. And perhaps most importantly, Christianity preserved Viking memory. The sagas, those incredible stories of heroes and battles and journeys to the edge of the world, they were written down by Christian monks. Without Christianity's emphasis on literacy and record-keeping, we might know almost nothing about the Vikings today. The very stories we tell about their fierce independence and warrior culture survive because Christian scholars thought they were worth saving. There's an irony there, profound and strange. The faith that supposedly weakened the Vikings is also the reason we remember them. So what's the answer? Did Christianity weaken or strengthen the Vikings? Maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Maybe Christianity didn't do either. Maybe it transformed them. It took a culture built for raiding and surviving in the harsh north and gave it the tools to build kingdoms that would last. It traded the short, violent glory of the warrior for the long, complicated power of the statesman. Some would call that strength, others would call it loss. Both are probably right. The Vikings didn't disappear when they became Christian. They became something else. They became Normans who conquered England. They became Rus who founded Russia. They became Varangians who guarded Byzantine emperors. Christianity didn't end their story. It changed what the story was about. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Cultures don't remain pure. They adapt, absorb, transform. The question isn't whether Christianity weakened or strengthened the Vikings. The question is whether we can accept that strength and weakness aren't always opposites, that sometimes they're just different chapters in the same endless human story of change.